Hey, we're saints. Welcome to our crucifixion live stream. Father Chris here, Deacon Greg with you. Hope you beautiful people are doing well. How you doing?
I'm fantastic. Thank you.
Good. Glad to hear that. We're going to have a good conversation today. We're going to talk about PORN.
Yeah.
And the ography.
Yeah.
You know, and for our audience, we spell it because I guess the algorithms block if you use that word.
Which word?
Got your little toys. And that also means we're going to, therefore talk about sex.
Yes.
Which word?
X.
It's so funny. All right. So, and the reason we're going after it, because it's a plague, right? Like I learned that industry, and the numbers now may be different simply because I learned this in I think it was 2003 or 4 when I read this study. Now, that's 20 years ago, but it's not that far either. And so the data that I read was that at that time, which you can imagine now, Deacon Greg, it's even more, was a $13 billion industry. I think that's the number. Now, but look to this. That industry made more money than NBC, ABC, CBS, and Fox combined.
Wow.
Right? So again, if my numbers are off because it's 20 years ago, but I mean, it tells you the plague that this thing is. It is not something to be treated lightly or taken lightly or so on. And what prompted this in our conversations is that I hear about it in confession all the time.
Wow.
It's a monster that people really are struggling with. And there's some, it's an empty act that, people, they're struggling with. And we're going to explore today, is it really just about lust and or is there something more? We're dealing with addiction. We're dealing with the temptations. We hope that at the end we'll be, able to help guide our people on how to deal with this stuff. Also protecting the next generation.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
It's becoming more and more normalized, especially as the industry keeps growing and growing. And it's something that our kids are just seeing all over the place because everything is related to it now at this point. I mean, it's in plot lines of major motion pictures as completely normal things, and it's become a thing.
Yeah, it's a battle. And we have decided that passive Christianity is not going to get it done.
Correct.
We've got to be warriors about this kind of stuff. And we want you to know, too, that if you struggle with this, you are not alone. And you are not unique, certainly. I mean, I've been saying that I hear about that in 90% of my confessions, and that the other 10% are lying. Because the point I make in that joke is that it's a big monster. And we're going to look for some solutions that are not, like some people out there, even Orthodox clergy who are teaching online are saying that marriage is the cure.
Yeah, that's not how that works.
Right. I mean, marriage is something a little bit different than just a legalistic, document and contract so that you can legally have sex, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like we talked about last week. When you limit it and limit marriage to that, you cheapen marriage.
Yeah.
And saying that it's a cure for addiction and it's a cure for wanting to watch all the time, you're completely losing what is actually going on in marriage and what's actually going on with people that have real addiction and real struggles with pornography.
Right.
And how to get beyond that and how to
right.
Yeah. I that's not the Orthodox church that I grew up in when people say things like that.
No. I think you said it yesterday. How did you say that? That is not what the Orthodox church teaches, but you said it better. You remember that?
I remember it, but I don't remember exactly what I said.
And I was like, ooh, keep that because we need it.
Yeah.
All
but
right.
It's essentially, I mean, it's just not the church I grew up in. It's not what I've been taught growing up.
Right.
It's not like the Orthodox theology about this stuff is not that. It's not that you run away from it. It's that you learn how to actually confront and deal with your sin in a healthy way.
Right.
And cheapening marriage to being a way to flee from something that is the big monkey on your back that is a big struggle,
Right.
you're not fighting the battle.
Right.
You're just hiding from the battle. And then you're Saul. You're not David.
Yeah. Well said. The other part of it is too, I was like thinking, to confront some of these guys that are out there saying this stuff, because clearly they're not hearing confessions, because I still hear confessions of married people who still struggle with this, POR,
Yeah.
like it doesn't just fix things. Like, it's such a weird thing. And you keep saying it's not the church you grew up in. It's not the church nor her teaching, whether you and I grew up in it or not, though we did. It's like, all right, so let's talk about it. You mentioned the word addiction, and let's talk about what happens, because one of the things that I hear almost universally is that it becomes a cycle and people feel like they can't escape it. And it makes them miserable. They feel horrible. Like, we're going to talk more about these words, but anxiety's all over the place. People, loneliness. They feel they're disgusted with themselves. They hate it, and they hate themselves, right? So how do we get through all that? Let's talk about what's happening when people use this thing, PORN, right? What happens? What's going on? So
I think people use it, like we've talked about, as an escape. You talked about the anxiety, all of this stuff. They're using it as a way to cope. And when you're told that you have to just get married to run away and escape from these other issues that you have, the reality is you cannot outrun those issues.
Right.
If you don't confront those issues, then whatever you use as a coping mechanism, when you are done with your coping mechanism, the issues are still there. Right. The problem is you now have the guilt that comes with the fact that you imbibed in whatever coping mechanism you were using. In this case, we're talking about, but in other situations, you're still coming back to the reality. Yeah. And that reality is not being escaped. So all of that stuff, when it comes crashing on you, feels so much more heavier than it did before. Right. It feels so much worse than it did before, because you're not confronting the issue. You're just running from it.
Right. Yeah, it's so well said. I think let's jump into habit.
Yeah.
Because really what happens here, this thing may start as a temptation to lust. And, there's the taboo element of it that's, like you said, kind of going away. But that, something being taboo draws someone in and they want to see it. And when they go watch it, But let's talk about habit. There are a multitude of great authors out there who write on habit. James Clear is one who's most famous. His Atomic Habits is a perennial bestseller. I mean, he's sold millions of copies. There's an author, B.J. Fogg, who has written a lot that I've read on habit. And the big one is someone named Charles Duhigg. And he wrote a book. I think he's a scientist, a doctor of some sort. But his book, The Power of Habit, is kind of the reference, at least for me. And they've all discovered that there is this pattern that happens, that they are wiring, synaptic pathways. And this is how a habit works. There is a cue, or some type of trigger, which is followed by a craving. You want something that leads to a routine or a behavior of some sort. And then at the end, you get a reward. And so when that cycle goes enough times, it actually wires what's called a synaptic pathway in your brain, which is basically to say, ooh, do that again. So, silly example, you walk into the office kitchen, there is a tub of cookies, and that's a trigger. You see it, right? And that cookie then has the craving, ooh, I want to eat that cookie, which you then eat the cookie, and then you have the reward in the sugar dump into the brain, and all of a sudden you're like, I want more of those, right? And sugar's a monster in and of itself too. We should talk about that one day, because sugar makes you want to eat more. And so if you're like me, you look at the cookie and you say, I'm going to eat a cookie, and then you eat 2 cookies or more, right? So you're starting to wire that. That's the habit loop. That's what they call it. That's what Charles Duhigg calls it, the habit loop.
Yeah, it's fascinating, because what is going on when people are utilizing this industry for their habits is they are rewiring their system.
Yeah.
So that becomes the way that they deal with anytime they have an issue. And then, like you said, I want cookies. Oh, I want more cookies. In the same way, we need more and more and more and more.
Right.
And in this case, that means more and more extreme.
Right.
And all of a sudden, like, the novelty has worn off, and you're going down all these weird rabbit holes down the dark web and finding all this crazy stuff.
Yeah. I've never been to the dark web.
I haven't either. It just seems dark.
I know.
It's scary.
So with that habit loop understanding in mind, this is, I think, exactly what's happening with pornography, in that, okay, so biologically, now leave all soul issues out of this, but biologically, the human being, is what's the word I'm looking for? But we want to propagate the race, right? In other words, one of our deep biological desires, even unconsciously, is to continue the human race, the human species. And as we know, that is done through the act of two people coming together to make another person, right? All right. And when that happens, they used to say, neuroscientists used to tell us that after the climax of that event, there is a release of dopamine in the brain. And dopamine is a feel-good chemical. I mean, it does a multitude of things, but one of the things it does is it does it gives pleasure. And it's one of the, ooh, do that again chemicals, right? So it's trying to wire the brain to repeat behaviors that help us, that propagate the race, that keep us going, and pleasure and all that kind of stuff. It does, as I said, do other things as well, but that's kind of one of its key functions. What we're seeing now in neuroscience is that it actually floods the brain right before the moment of climax, right before that moment. So it's like it's really driving, keep the race going, and it feels good. And when we have a release of dopamine in the brain, it starts to say, do that again. But to your point, when we run to it, initially maybe driven by lust and the exploration, you do it enough times and that synaptic pathway starts to be built. And as you said, you got to go crazier and crazier and more hardcore to get the same feeling. And the problem with it now, the loop, this habit loop of cue or trigger, cue, I say, craving, routine, reward, is now followed by shame.
Yeah.
Because, I'm just telling you what my experience is. In confession, these people feel deep shame. They hate themselves because, like, why did I do that? And it then leads to, because of that synaptic pathway, repeat.
Yep.
And so what I'm finding is that most people do not run to it for the temptation of lust, though maybe initially, but then it becomes a release for stress.
Yeah.
That I hear all the time. It's just like, when I'm stressed, I run to it. And then I do it and I hate myself.
Yeah. Which causes more stress.
Yeah.
Which then causes you to run back to it. And so that's where that loop, I love that term, habit loop, just keeps feeding into itself like that snake that's eating its own tail. The Ouroboros that just keeps going back and forth and back and forth. And it just, if you're using it as an escape, if you're using it as a way to get out of all of those things that you're not actually dealing with, those things are not only still present, that shame element that you brought up makes them more heightened.
Yeah.
And in them being more heightened, you need it again and again and again.
Yeah.
And it just keeps repopulating itself.
Yeah. And I'm finding in all of, and I hear a considerable amount of, we have a lot of conversations, and you do too, about this in confession and outside of it as well, that there is a lot of loneliness that leads to, the use of this stuff. There is a lot of feeling of inadequacy. And ultimately, what I see is the big driver is there's a lack of purpose in a person's life.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I keep saying this. I don't use I've seen it. I don't use it. I don't have time. if for no other reason, I mean, I know all the dangers of it, but if for no other reason, it's because I don't have time, man. Like we're working so hard, you and I, our team, to move this Warrior Saints movement forward. There's no time to do that kind of stuff. Like, but the purpose lights me up. It gives me drive. It makes me hungry. It makes me want to wake up in the morning and go to work and do those things. So having that purpose is in and of itself a beautiful thing, but it eliminates, at least for me, the need to, fall into that despair and that cycle, loop.
Yeah, because it gives you something that you're working towards. Which, when you have something you're working towards, you're going to be not feeling all of that anxiety, all of that hopelessness, all of that loneliness, because you've actually got your eye on something bigger. When we look at life and we're only looking at how horrible everything is going on in our lives, and we don't see that there's a larger picture and what our role is in that bigger picture, what we can actually offer to the world, we're going to have that despair. We're going to have that loneliness. We're going to default to hopelessness, which is going to lead to anxiety, which is ultimately going to lead to stress. And that stress is also ultimately going to lead us to those things that we use to cope with our stress that we can't handle with. And then if that is, then we're going right back to it and rinse and repeat, or shame and repeat,
and it becomes it's not a willpower issue always, I'm just going to fight it because of this habit loop that's been developed, and we're going to talk about this at the end, like some ideas we have on how to help overcome that. One of the things, if we want to transition a little bit, that we hear, and we talked about it earlier, that even some online gurus are out there talking about, is that marriage is the cure. Right. Yeah. And it becomes like a rehab center for the sin of lust. And as we said, my contention is it may initially have begun as a temptation to lust, but it becomes something so much deeper than that, marriage is not the cure, right? Yeah. Marriage is something very different, very beautiful. And it, like you said, to use it and speak of marriage as the solution, it cheapens the sacrament of marriage, the holiness, the sanctity of marriage, and just becomes this legalistic contract that now you are married, you can have.
Yeah.
And if you do that and have, sex, you're fine. It's legal.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's all kinds of flaws in that. Let's go there.
There's all kinds of problems there because you've not experienced what actually looks like in a healthy situation. You've only seen it on TV. Yeah. And then you expect things to be as seen on TV, and you're going down these rabbit holes, and your partner's not going to be wanting that, looking for that, feeling like that's part of things. There is a episode of Friends. I don't even remember what season or how long ago it was, but the guys had free and they were so afraid to turn it off because they didn't want to lose it.
Right.
And they didn't want to be the guys that turned off the free.
Yeah.
But then there was this really funny scene where Chandler comes in and goes to Joey and says, "We have to turn it off. I went to the bank today. The teller didn't want to sleep with me. The teller was not interested in me. We didn't go into the back counter and do things in the vault. Yeah. Like, none of that stuff happened." Yeah. And Joey's like, "I know. The pizza delivery girl came and nothing happened with her." And Chandler's like, "We have to turn off the." And they do. And then they're immediately afraid and they have to go back and make sure it's still there. Right?
Yeah.
It was a funny episode, but it was the beginning of the normalization of things.
Yeah.
But what they cue in on is that it is an escape from reality. And it is not a depiction of reality. Right. And if you enter into marriage thinking that it is going to be a cure for the fact that you need more and more of that stuff to do what you need to do, you've cheapened marriage. You've given yourself a false sense of reality within marriage. Mm-hmm. And when you get to actual marriage, it becomes boring. And so what do? You feel like it's inadequate and you go back to the other stuff that was doing what you wanted it to do.
Yeah.
Or giving you what you felt you needed.
because you're coming into a marriage, you know, broken, as we all are, but not from just the sin and temptation of lust, right?
Right.
It doesn't eliminate that, for God's sakes, right? I mean, like, once you get married, you still have that temptation. I mean, I hear that in confession all the time too. How many of us know people who have, though married, had sex someone outside the marriage, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it's out there, right?
Yeah.
And that too is becoming commonplace, unfortunately, right? That's a tragedy in and of itself, because it breaks what the sacrament of marriage is supposed to be about. And we're gonna follow up this episode with another one on marriage.
I think there's a lot that we need to talk about in what you just said.
You know, and marriage. So once you've established this synaptic pathway, you know, that dopamine push, marriage doesn't make that go away. In fact, the science shows us. We'll talk about it at the end of the episode. You cannot eliminate or remove a synaptic pathway once it's been established. So it's there, right?
Yeah.
Marriage, I think, is, you know, it's not about the legalization of sex. That is part of marriage, in that it's, you know, in that union it's blessed. But marriage is something much higher. I mean, it's the pathway to the kingdom of God, right? I mean, we are called, and here we're going to expose some of the problems with PORN. God has two basic commandments, right? They asked the Lord Jesus, what's the great commandment? Love the Lord God, heart, soul, mind, strength. And another like it, your neighbor is yourself. And within the context of marriage, you are finding the first other to love, right?
Yeah.
You wake up next to one another, you go to sleep at the end of the day next to one another. And the whole of that relationship is to help us live the life, the crucifixional life, to model our lives on Jesus Christ for the sake of other. And there's that other person. I wake up next to mine every morning and she next to me, right? And we lie down at the end of the day next to each. That's where the business lies. And so, excuse me, this is what marriage, it's calling us towards the life of the cross, right? And all joking aside, you know, yeah, wives are tough, and I'm sure they say husbands are tough. Yes, of course, but it's the life of the cross. And that's what it's about. It's not just about, you know, a legal contract that now we're, you know, allowed.
Yep.
It's funny because that's a pretty legalistic Protestant mentality, and many who come into the church bring that with them, and they just can't escape it. I mean, you know, like you're like cement, right? Cement it's all mixed up, but it's permanently set. So it's stuck in their heads, which is why these guys are saying things like, you know, get married to battle the sin of lust. Ugh. Anyways, it actually can, using this stuff, it harms other people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my whole reason for that rant. We're told by Jesus to love God, and by doing that, we do so by loving the other person. Well, that other person doesn't like, I mean, like, again, I hear confessions from, and now I'm going to pick on the fellas, you know, from the women who are married or in relationships with the guys who are struggling with this, and they feel terrible.
Yeah.
And hurt and angry, right? Because am I not enough?
Yeah.
Am I inadequate? Does he not love me? Am I not pretty? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All that stuff.
It causes a lot of breakage between you've essentially bastardized the thing that is supposed to bring you together in marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, in the marriage service, the prayer is that we keep the marriage bed undefiled, right? And we automatically assume that means not to have affairs and not to step out. But this is also part of that.
Yeah.
This is also a huge part of that. Because what you've done is you've shifted your gaze. You've shifted your focus. And you are no longer focusing on the other person, as you said, right in front of you. You're now focused away from them.
Yeah.
And they feel it.
Yeah.
They know it. And they feel the disconnection.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. And we've said it a bunch of times. I think the real struggle, why people use this, it starts with lust, but then it quickly devolves into that loneliness.
Yeah.
You know, and the lack of purpose in life. And yet the other person feels like, the spouse feels like it's because of lust. So now you've not only done that and damaged them, but you've done so on a lie, that they're assuming that it's because you're, you know, horny and just want to, you know, and they don't look, even this, they don't have an opportunity to help you through that monster that you're fighting.
Yeah.
You've robbed them of that opportunity. I know that in my own struggles, no one has been a bigger help to me than my bride. I mean, the Lord, obviously, he's the conqueror of all monsters, but my bride helps me, and hopefully I'm able to help her. You rob them of that opportunity. You know?
Well, especially if there's stuff that you're not willing to open up to them. You've broken the connection, the bond.
Yeah.
You know, when you're not willing to talk to them about your struggles, you've broken the ability for you to have those later conversations, and they feel it. They always feel it.
Yeah.
But there's got to be a way through.
Yeah.
And there's got to be some ways to battle it. And I know you've referenced in a little bit ago that we're going to talk about what are some ways to battle it. And so what are they? What are some things that we can do to wage and win that war within, so that we can actually face this stuff head on and not just escape from it?
Right. I think it's the question, and really where so many people struggle with. And you know, let me preface it, because we're going to get into some tips and practical points, as we always do. You know, neither one of us are psychologists.
No.
And neither one of us are really, you know, the reference for what we're talking about today. We're just exploring a topic from our great love for people, and hoping to give them the best. So with that being said, it's like, I mean, if you follow the steps that we're about to give you, you're going to see some success. But I mean, you can't hold us to that, because we're fighting through this with you, you know, and trying to help our beautiful warrior saints out there as they struggle with this. So we came up with a list of some things. What are some of the practical tips? I mean, these practicals, you know, came from you in our conversation yesterday as we prepped.
Well, I think a big thing is you got to remove access. Phones make that almost impossible to do, but do whatever you got to do it.
Yeah.
Remove the ways that you are able to access these things. There's stuff out there. There's websites and all of that. One of them's called Covenant Eyes, that you can put on your devices that will basically block you from actually seeing certain sites. But, you know, any web browser, from what I understand, has filters where it can block you from seeing certain things. And I think you need to have that. The other thing I think you need is an accountability partner.
Yeah.
And I know that's uncomfortable in these kinds of scenarios, but it really is helpful. Like for me, I struggle with going to the gym. I do it. I've talked about it before.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I don't feel like I want to do.
Yeah.
I have a trainer, because within that there's built-in accountability.
Yeah.
It's someone that I've paid to make sure that I show up.
Yeah.
And I don't want to waste that money.
Yeah.
And so I build accountability that way.
Look, AA.
They,
you know, I mean, we're talking about addictions PORN. Yeah. I mean, that's a big addiction that everyone knows about, alcoholism. And they make their people have a sponsor, which is someone to help hold them accountable. And look, AA is not successful with everybody, but boy, they're doing work, man. And you know what I mean?
And they're doing the work, and they're doing the hard work. And guess what? Before there was AA, there was the Orthodox Church.
Yeah.
And within the Orthodox Church, confession is about accountability.
Yeah.
Confession at its core is us going and having someone that we are talking to help us through these struggles.
Right.
So we have to actually talk about the struggles that we have.
Yeah.
And we need to actually be open about them, and then build that accountability within there, and work whatever steps our Father Confessor is able to help us through.
Yep, absolutely. I do want to say this, that no one should come to their Father Confessor who's going to give them a magic fix to overcome this.
There is no such thing.
Sin it's a fight for a reason. Yeah. And I think that leads to the point that we should be prepared that with this habit, addiction, sin, temptation of PORN, you better be prepared that it's going to be a fight, right? Like, I mean, all of our sins and temptations we have to fight against. I mean, that's what we talk about, waging war against the passions, right? That's what, you know, like, this is war, and it's going to be, no war is easy, right? And people get banged up in war. But with that being said, I think the good news is the power of the cross of Jesus Christ shows us that as he, the great Lord, our great commander, if you will, of our army, he waged war over the greatest of all enemies and conquered. So if we can wage war with the life of the cross as well, that's a victorious route, right? So not to be too silly, but his battle plan is effective, and so there's great hope in that. And we'll talk more about hope at the end, but be prepared that it's going to be hard because, and now we can talk about some of the things that healing does, is as we were talking earlier, Deacon Greg, about the habit loop. We have to work. That's the first thing to attack. When you want to fix this, you got to attack that. Now, let me say this again: the neuroscience and the habit science that I've read and seen, you cannot remove a synaptic pathway. Once it's there, it's in the brain. I mean, it's just I guess I didn't even explain synaptic pathways, but basically, there are cells in the brain cells, and there's a highway in between. Called an axon, and the electrical impulse goes from cell A over that axon. It's covered with a sheath. They call it myelin sheath, right? It's kind of like a lubricant to help the electrical current slide, and it goes to cell B. And then from B, it goes to C and D and so on. I mean, and they're huge networks, obviously. Once that A, B, C, D, E, F, G path has been built, it's there.
Yep.
So does that mean we're doomed forever to repeat this and this is a monster we can never overcome? I think no. And science shows us as well. It can be overcome. But you can't rewire the brain, but you have to hack the loop. So let's go back to that cookie analogy. I'm walking in, there's the trigger. The cookies are on the counter, all right? That habit pull, it's hard. I mean, you feel it. There's the craving. We have to stack the deck to change the behavior and set it up so that there is a different reward. Does that make sense? Yeah. So in other words, what do? Like our beautiful Jane, who always provides, in our office, we go in there and she's always got snacks. She's so motherly, good to us, takes good care of us. We need to say to her, all right, look, I've already been programmed that when I walk into the kitchen and see that little plate on the counter, I immediately have a craving. Put apples in there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a silly thing, but it's just an image. The other part of it is that I have to say in the behavior that I write a note and stick it on the cookie plate, don't touch, or something, or I replace the cookie with apples or something, Yeah. So that I feel, because if I just go in there and I've got willpower and I'm going to fight it, we're going to lose 9 times out of 10, right? So it's about stacking the deck in your favor, and it takes a lot of work. To reprogram that synaptic pathway to be a positive habit loop as opposed to the negative one.
Yeah. I had a band director in high school who used to tell us, don't be sorry, change the behavior.
Yeah.
And as we're talking about this particular habit loop, that shame piece where we start to feel, we're always going to feel that until we start changing the behavior.
Yeah.
If we start stacking the deck in our favor, we learn how to actually deal with those things that are giving us those cues to get to that craving, then we actually change that behavior and we'll find ways to actually overcome.
Yeah. Look, it's hard. I mean, we say it so easily, but we know it's hard. I mean, because you're fighting neurochemistry and biology.
Yep.
So it's not going to be like one of these things where, like I said, it's an easy fix.
It doesn't happen overnight.
No, for heaven's sakes. I know that whenever I have battled personally with one of my sins and temptations, whatever they may be, that I really have to be very deliberate and make a plan for those inevitable moments when I'm going to see the cue that's going to, put that temptation craving in front of me. And I've got to be prepared. I can't just say I'm going to fight this when it comes. Yeah, okay, fine. Be prepared. Anyways, it's not easy, but it is, I guess, the hope, and we'll end with that in just a moment. But the hope is that no sin cannot be conquered with no sin is unconquerable with the power of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and the grace that God gives us. So we take hope in that. The last question before we end, this epidemic of PORN is, I mean, you and I are not going to go out there and shut down the whole industry, right? So I wish we could, but I mean, it's bigger than us in that sense. So our kids are going to face it. How do we help the next generation?
Yeah. I think you have to know what your kids are doing, what they're using, especially early on. Build good habits with technology.
Mm-hmm.
And there are tools at your disposal that will help you, i.e., parental controls that will block certain things and limit what can be on there. Obviously, it's not going to stop everything.
Yeah.
It's not going to change everything. And as they get older, those parental controls are going to adjust depending, and they're going to have access to more and more. It's built in. It's designed by the system to get you to fight in or work into the system.
Right.
But as much as you can, you need to start establishing those habits when they're young.
Yeah, I agree.
So that you, as they're older, are able to keep having conversations with them about it, able to keep talking to them about it, able to keep working with them so that you've built and developed a relationship where those conversations, they're coming to you.
Yeah.
They're working with you, and they're comfortable enough with you to talk through those things.
That's so well said, Deacon Greg. I mean, because I'm a bragger about my children. My girls are just fierce lions, man. They're so great.
Yeah.
But my bride and I have spent, because my bride and I have spent an inordinate amount of time and effort in communicating with them so that when there is a struggle in their lives, they come to us and we talk freely about it. And we did most of that work around what I consider to be the most sacred space, the table.
Yeah.
Right? Like talking with them. Those were the moments for us around the dinner table, particularly. How was school? We never asked that. We didn't care. I mean, we cared, but like we were more interested in deep topics and giving them instructions in the life of the gospel, teaching them, walking through it with them, talking, bantering back and forth, letting them come to develop their own ideas and understandings. And, again, forgive me the brag, but they're just, amazing young women, and I think a lot of that is because of them and most of it because of their mother. But, in those conversations, we were teaching them something that was very contrary to what the world is teaching them, but now they at least heard the truth. And in their own lives, they will have to make their own choices, but they are not defaulting into heeding the voice of culture because they had no alternative.
Right.
That's
the key. And you have to build that relationship, you have to build those pathways so that they have that ability to talk through things, talk with you, that comfortability to talk with you. My son said something to me the other day that was phenomenal, and it just made me overjoyed. Now, he's 3.
Yeah.
So the depth behind it was not there. But he said, Baba, can we turn off the music and you can just talk to me?
Mm.
And I said, sure, buddy. What do you want to talk about? He said, after my birthday, I'll be 3.
Yeah.
And I said, that's a fabulous conversation for a 3-year-old to be able to have. But it's already there that we're not going to just listen to music in the car while we're driving. We're going to talk sometime.
Yeah.
We're going to have those opportunities to work through stuff. And I'm there to help you work through the things that you need to work through.
Right.
Yeah.
Proverbs, right? Train up a child in the way that he should go. And when he's old, he won't depart from it. I mean, the statement being there is like some voice is going to teach children. Let it be yours. Let it be one that is guided by the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I think that leads to a final point we should make is that the church is a hospital.
Yeah.
I mean, she is there to help heal all. I mean, all of us are sinners. Only Jesus Christ was not a sinner, right? He's the only one. And so we all need that healing. And the place where that happens the best is in the church. And so we encourage people to come to church. And not for our sake.
Right.
We do it for their sake because that is the place where God, not to ever limit God to be sure, but where he does his best work.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that it's ever too late, to bring someone to church. And again, let me preface, just for, considering the fact that you go to church doesn't mean you're going to be perfect. You and I are wonderful examples of that, right? But boy, without it, you got little shot, right?
And I think beyond that, you said it's never too late to bring them, and embrace that struggle. So how often have we heard from parents, I don't bring my kids to church because they don't know how to be there. They don't behave in church. They're never going to learn how to behave in church if you don't bring them. And if you just keep delaying that, by the time they're old enough that you think they're going to behave in church, they don't know how to be in church because they've never been in church.
Right.
So you just got to fight through that a little bit.
Yeah.
Everything in life is that fight.
Yeah.
And everything in life is going to have a little bit of that fight. The minute that you stop the fight is the minute that you lose. That's why you said it beautifully earlier. Passive Christianity does not get it done because passive Christianity takes you out of the fight.
Yeah.
Passive Christianity teaches you to go and hide, run from things, hide away from it, find the magic pill that is going to cure it all rather than facing it head on and being in the fight so that you can actually overcome what you need to overcome, fighting through it to build those new habits, build those new pathways, build whatever you need to build.
Yeah.
So, because if you build it, they will come.
Yes, they will. Thank you. I just watched that. You know, I mean, there's a lot of nice things that happen when we enter into the community of God's holy church, and that is that we're in this war, and all of a sudden we look around and we're like, "Whoa, I ain't alone. There are other warriors out here, and they may be even fighting the same battles.
Yep.
And maybe we can fight together."
Yeah.
You come into an environment as well where you will be, hopefully, I mean, here for sure, uplifted, no matter how many times you fall. The only sin that we really don't permit is lying down. Like, fall all you want, man, but get back up. Let's get in the fray, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to just wallow in it, great. Maybe it's time you look somewhere else. You are in the environment where the teaching is pure. And by that, I mean, it's the preaching of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Even your words and my words are not great, but the words of the Lord are life-giving. They are a life-giving spring, right? And so we're in that place where the whole thing is about the word of God, and that helps see things differently, helps us see things differently. And not everybody chooses it. Even you and I sometimes, I know myself, often choose not the will of God. And I do commit sins. But at least I'm hearing what's right. I'm constantly bombarded. If you're constantly in your social feeds and on news and, all that stuff, you are going to be hearing a lot. But is it stuff you want to be hearing that's leading you, in life-giving ways? I mean, probably not. Anyways, so let's wrap by hopefully a word of hope. With this sin and this struggle of PORN and the temptation of lust and all that kind of stuff, I guess we would say to our people, I don't know how you want to address this, but you're not unique. It's not just you. You are broken like all the rest of us.
Yep.
And though some of us may not struggle with that particular sin, we all struggle with one or many sins, right? So that feeling of being alone is something that you don't have to submit to.
Yeah. We often think of ourselves arrogantly as being the only ones dealing with stuff.
Yeah.
The reality is we're all dealing with stuff. Let's just deal with it together.
Yeah.
And the church, as you said earlier, as hospital, becomes a place where we can all come for that healing that we need so that we can battle that war whole.
Yeah.
We can battle that war to the best of our ability, and we can do it completely.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you said it, one of us said it somewhere, but passive Christianity does not get it done. And so as we wrap this up, hopefully we were helpful to you beautiful warrior saints today. But look, it's a war. We got it. We're fighting our own wars, maybe the same, maybe the different, but it's a war nonetheless. But to lie down on the sidelines, it is not getting it done. And I'm telling you, if you just gather yourself up and say, all right, I'm going to enter the fray, I'm going to become a warrior saint, I'm telling you, Christ's way works. It's just a matter of living that crucifixional life forever and ever, as long as God gives us breath. And even when we may fall, we get right back up, and that in the end, God will show us a way through, a path to that victory. I mean, he proved it already in the resurrection of his Son, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So for all of you guys who struggle with PORN and gals as well, you're not alone. And it is not insurmountable. It is a monster that you can conquer. I know that it won't be easy. I also know that you don't have to do that alone. You have communities near you, wherever you are. You have us for whatever little good we are worth. But don't fight that fight alone. Just fight it, man. Whatever it takes, fight it. And I promise you, in the end, with God's grace, you'll overcome. Great stuff. We will see you Sunday for Orthros and Liturgy at 9 and 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, respectably, whatever. You got it. Love you. See you next week. As always, keep walking on the way of the warrior saint.